Welcome to Fur, Fins, and Feathers. After a long hiatus, we are back on the air, and we are very happy to have a very special guest today. We have Bill Ritchie from Middleborough, Massachusetts, who is going to share his love of animals and horses and dogs, and it's good to see you.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
It's been a long time coming.
Yes.
Welcome. How did you start with all these beautiful animals?
Well, it's a lifelong love. When I was a little kid growing up in Harwich on the Cape, and the Cape wasn't built up the way it is now, very rural. There were 9 kids in our family, and we did not have pets. My mother said there were enough animals in the house, we didn't need any pets. So, it seemed like we were all involved in all kinds of animals, whether it be toads and frogs and turtles. I was quite passionate about birds, actually, and later in life raised birds and stuff. But I just thought they were beautiful, and I would draw them and do pictures and all. But I also was quite enamored by horses. They're just so regal, and I used to ride my bike to the closest horse farm and just watch the horses out in the pasture. And then I just loved dogs. We weren't allowed to have them, so I would play with the neighborhood dogs. And it was funny because the neighborhood dogs, it seems like a lot of them, I gave them more attention maybe than they were getting at home, but they loved me. So there was always that connection. So it was kind of a neat thing. And it just went on from there.
Tell us about your business in Middleborough.
Well,
the name of your business is?
Sterling Pointe Farm.
Okay.
It's actually in Rochester. We're right on the line. The town line is at the end of the driveway.
Okay.
And it's a facility that a client of mine built in, I think we finished it in 2002. Prior to that, I had a farm in Falmouth.
Okay.
And this particular client asked me if I would be interested in selling my property, and going into this, they weren't, real equine minded, and they needed somebody to run it. I designed the barn, got them in touch with a barn builder that I liked from Rhode Island, and it's a large facility. Once it was 200 acres, it's now 40 plus, but we have 45 stalls with an attached indoor arena, individual turnouts for all the horses. It's very up-to-date, state-of-the-art, automatic waters. The waters outside have heating units in them, and we have a fly system throughout the barn for those pesky flies in the September and going into October, those house flies that bite your ankles. So it's nice, and it served a purpose for me because my property in Falmouth, which I loved, I had a pond and trees and lots of wildlife, but I was getting overhorsed. My business was thriving at the time, and I was turning a lot of people away, so this gave me the opportunity to expand.
Talk about what you do as a trainer.
Well, I do less now than I used to, but starting off, when I first started, it was working with young horses and seeing them through all of their training stages. So I believe that you should start working with a horse at a very early age, when they're just a couple of months old. Actually, you start imprinting with them while they're still at their mother's side. And then after they're weaned, by that time you need to have put a halter on them and led them around and brush them and get them accustomed to things, maybe running the clippers over them so you can clip their face or the ears or something later on with the show horses. And it's just a progressive thing. As the horse gets older, you keep adding things. You teach them to lunge. When you're teaching them to lunge, and that's just them going around in a circle on a line, you teach them the voice commands. So they learn what walk and trot and canter. And with those, there's an added, like a walk is just easy walk, trot, canter. Then that progresses when you start training them under saddle, because they remember all of that you've taught them verbally and handling with them.
So it's a progression.
It is. And people don't realize sometimes how those things that you've taught them early on for a whole sort of different purpose carries over into their whole life of riding. So that's it. We do different phases of equine sports. Halter horses, which is conformation, like showing a dog. We have the pleasure classes, and there's English pleasure classes, and there's Western pleasure classes. There's the stock horses is one style of, let's say, hunter pleasure, and then you have saddlebreds. That's English riding, and it's a whole different attire and a different type of horse. And so it's nice to be diversified, and it's exciting in the barn because we have all that. Plus we have dressage riders and dressage instructors. So it makes it kind of exciting, and I think it makes it for a happier barn.
How has the equine scene changed in the last few years?
Well, I think more than anything, it's over the years it's become more specialized, for sure. And you see less of people who do multiple seats, the English, the Western, the dressage, the saddle seat. But I think as far as the industry goes, it's more of a decline. And I think it's probably...
And why is that?
I'm guessing the economy.
Is it?
I'm guessing. You know, it's just like with the dogs, the horses. You're hearing a lot about horses that are, you know, at these places where they need to be rescued, just like the dogs and cats at a kennel. And so there's, you know, just like the dogs and cats, there's the no-kill part of that where people try to go in there and save them. But I think from years ago, there was overbreeding of the horses. And so there was a glut of them. And then when the industry started to slow down, what do you do? And there's stories about people taking trailer loads of horses and just releasing them out in the prairies or the fields or, you know, where it's rural. And those are domesticated horses that can't survive. There's not enough food there for them. And so, you know, it has become a problem.
How can young people learn about horses? It's a beautiful sport.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, before I say passionate about it, it's something I always wanted. I can remember my very first time. It's as vivid as today. We're at a summer camp. My family would always go, no electricity, no running water. We had a hand pump, outhouse. And we would walk, I don't know how many miles, it seemed like a lot. And behind this gas station, we used to go there for like an ice cream or a soda, there was 2 horses. And there was a sign, horseback riding, 50 cents. And I saved my money instead of getting a soda or an ice cream, and I rode, and that was it. I was hooked. That one ride. And so when we moved back from this summer to our house in Harwich, I got on my bike, and I knew of a barn in Dennis, and I rode my bike to Dennis, and I just started hanging out at the barn. And I would clean stalls. I'd give pony rides. I'd do anything just so I could ride a horse at the end of the day. And so it just became, you know, became such a part of my life. I have quite a few students now, young students who ride, and I think it's just the greatest activity.
And where do they come from?
They're everywhere. I mean, the families are all different walks of life. You know, there's no boundary as far as, you know, who might come, and age. And I've had some kids at 3.5. I've started them, and so it's so important because it gives them something to do that they, one, usually care about and love, and there's a responsibility. And the ones who really get hooked, it keeps them off the street, it keeps them out of the malls, it keeps them off of their phones or devices. So I can't say enough what it does for a child.
They have a very good equine program at Johnson & Wales, don't they?
Yes, in fact, the owner of our barn, his family's been the owners for, I think, going on 5 years now, graduated from Johnson & Wales equine program. And so he did barn management. And, I personally don't know a lot about the courses and that stuff, but I've been affiliated with 2 people that have graduated from there. And one's a friend of mine, a lifelong friend, who's tops in the horse world.
But that is a very good major for someone who's interested in animals.
It is. And it's surprising because a lot of people don't realize that Johnson & Wales has an equine program. They have their own barn and everything. Everyone thinks of them as the culinary arts more than anything else.
I worked there in the culinary program for many years.
Yeah.
It has diminished.
Oh, it has.
There are other programs in marketing and sciences and everything. And the equine program is very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I have fond memories of when I was living in Rhode Island and going to, they had a restaurant which was a learning place for the culinary arts. And it was in a grand, I think it was a big old white house, and they had a piano player, and all your waiters and waitresses were, had the tuxes and all that stuff. It was a lot of fun. And you could get a fabulous meal for not a lot of money.
No, I was there for a few years. I did I was involved in not the culinary, it was part of the culinary program, but it was in hospitality management.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good. So then we move on to another interest of yours, the Australian Shepherd.
Yeah, so the Australian Shepherd is my first breed. And us dog people, we might have multiple breeds of dogs, but there's always one breed that started us on that road. And I was working at a horse farm in Pennsylvania. I did a 6-year apprenticeship. And they happened to have 2 Australian Shepherds. And they had one originally, and then they got another little female, and they bred them. And they offered me one of the puppies. And it was kind of funny. The mother and father were blue merles. This is a red merle. The blue merles are this multicolor, but would be a bluish gray instead of the brown. But I chose a black tri. They only come in 4 colors: a black tri, a red merle, and a blue merle. And I don't know what it was about her. Maybe because she was different. And Brian, I got to tell you, she was the most incredible dog. And it wasn't just because she was my first.
Hello, you are a love.
She was so smart. And at the time, I had a trailer house on the property under the apple orchard. I didn't have a television. And I would lie on the couch and listen to the radio, and Maggie, her name was Maggie, would just lay on me. She's just a tiny little thing, and kept getting bigger and bigger. And I can remember driving my car one time. She used to sit in my lap, and I'd be driving, and all of a sudden I realized, okay, Maggie, it's time for you to move over to the passenger seat because I couldn't see anymore. But she did tricks, and I don't even remember how I taught her, but she would jump through a hula hoop, and she would jump rope. She would sit in front of me, and we'd jump rope together. She would climb ladders. She would ride on a horse with you. You would just tell her up. I, later in years, was living at a house. We had a swimming pool with a big rock foundation that the water came down, and I'd go up, and she would run up to the top, and I'd say jump, and she would just dive into the pool. So they're just a very smart breed of dog. And
this is a very unique breed.
they are.
Could you elaborate about the history of this breed?
Well, yeah, a little bit. There are different people have different ideas, but what I always read from the beginning, and my friend Leslie Frank, who's a top breeder in the country, renowned prop wash kennel. Everything I had read, they originated in the Basque Mountains between France and Spain, and the Basque shepherds were, famous for their shepherd work. And I don't know if it was in the 40s or 50s, they started to migrate to Australia because there was a big cattle and sheep boom. I think it was probably more sheep. And so obviously those herders brought their herding dogs with them. And so they established themselves in Australia. And then I believe it was like in the 50s, 60s, we started importing sheep from Australia for our food sources. And along with these herds of sheep came their herders and their sheepdogs. And so people here in the States thought of the Australian Shepherd as an Australian breed, but actually they're not. And really more credit is given to them today as an American breed because there's been so much breeding and so much more has happened with the development of the breed since they've been here in America.
But they are a very versatile breed.
They are.
They can do most everything.
They can. They're so smart. It's funny, some of these programs you see, the smartest dogs in the world and all that stuff. I just saw one, the most intelligent. The Australian Shepherd wasn't even on it. And I go, these people don't know what they're talking about. And I thought it was kind of funny, some of the dogs that they had there in the front. I always think of the German Shepherds, the Poodles, but Aussies have always been there, right up there amongst them. But yes, they're very versatile. They do obedience and they do tracking, and they're a wonderful show dog to show in breed classes. They're beautiful.
Great with children.
They are, and they're protective. They love their families. They're friendly, as you can tell. He gets a little obnoxious. He's so friendly. It's like, I have a joke with these two because when people come into the barn, they run up to them and they're all like hands and paws. And I said, I'm trying so hard to make them friendly.
Now he has a couple of points.
He does. He's been shown. The only thing that slowed him
down.
How
old is he?
He's he's 4 years old now.
Okay.
Yep. And he was being shown last year, was his first, maybe even in the fall prior to 2020. And then the COVID struck. And so that kind of stopped his show career. So we're hoping to get him started back up again.
Who shows him?
A good friend that we mutually know, Judy Harrington. And Leslie Frank also does. And we co-own him.
Two outstanding people.
They are. I can't say enough about them. And I've known Leslie since the 70s, as I came across a picture somebody sent me that just blew my mind because we were all so much younger.
We all were.
But we were in an Australian Shepherd at a show. I think it was, Get a Sire, because it had to have been because of the dogs that were in the class.
It's becoming a popular breed.
Yes. And
not overly popular though.
I think good breeders will keep things in check. And the reason is any breed, you have to know what their needs are. And an Australian Shepherd is a herding dog, and they like to work. And work could be anything. Work could be catching a Frisbee to keep their minds occupied. They're not the type of dog that most people could have and just sort of have.
They're not couch potatoes.
They certainly will be on the couch with you, but they also need some activities, and they need training, like any breed of dog. I mean, you can't just. I've seen people buy dogs like an Australian Shepherd, and they don't know really what they're doing, and they don't give them that activity where they need to use their minds, and sometimes things start to go bad.
How do the Aussies get along with the horses?
Wonderful. What I like about all the Aussies I've had, and part of it is in training, and I don't have to really do much, is that they're not so interested in the horses where it becomes a problem. I have seen at different places where people have Australian Shepherds that they're constantly at the horses, either under the fence or barking or herding, and I don't like that. You know, I like them. He's with me constantly. Every horse that I lead out to the pasture, he's at my side. He might trot off ahead of me or whatever, and he's right there for the return trip. I never have to wonder where he is, ever. If I had an Aussie, when I was in Falmouth, he would be outside. If I walked to one end of the house and I had all windows overlooking the pond, he would be down that end of the house. And if I walked to the kitchen on the other end of the house, I'd look out the window and there he is. He always was tuned in to where you were. And that kind of describes the breed. They're really in tune. That's what I love about them.
And then we've got our friend.
We do, and I can't say enough about the Jack Russells. And you know, there's a lot of people who will be into larger dogs. Not that Aussies are large, and they miss out on the small breeds. My first Jack Russell, actually, I had a neighbor from Ireland in Falmouth, Maeve Thurston, and she had the best Jack Russells, and I had never seen Jack Russells like this before. The ones I saw when you go visit a hunter jumper barn or whatever, they're all what I call yippy and nippy, run up to you and you didn't know if they're going to bite your ankles or what. And hers were like this, totally calm and relaxed. And also,
I'm ready to take him home.
And she had different colors. She had some that were all brown, colored just like, say, a dachshund, and she had a black and tan, no white on it at all. But she had this wonderful male that was colored just like this, white with the brown head. His name was Tusker. And one day she knew how much I liked them. And she called me and said that we have an opportunity to get 2 Jack Russells from Ireland. This older gentleman who was breeding them was no longer going to breed. He had 2, a mother and a daughter, and we could get them. And so I agreed, and she made all the arrangements, and we got them. And it was funny, her and her husband, Peter, were going to pick them up at the airport, and she said, well, which one do you think you're going to want? And I said, Maeve, I don't have a clue. I said, you and Peter are picking them up. You pick whichever one you want, you choose, and I'll take the other one. Well, I got the prize. We had a dog naming party. I named my Mardra, which is Gaelic for dog. She was the sweetest dog. She was just like this, sweet. I did breed her a couple of times too. Tusker, Maeve's wonderful dog that was born in England, but it was an Irish Jack Russell. These are Irish Jack Russells. And her puppies were always spoken for before they were even born. And her last litter I kept 2. I only bred her 3 times.
I've only been to Ireland once, but our family is all there. Mm-hmm. And I know I saw loads of Jack Russells when I was in Ireland. And they were all lovely.
Yes, yeah. We call them the shorties. So I lost my 2 from Madra. 2 of the greatest little dogs ever. And they were long-lived. Madra lived to 18. Her son lived to 17.
Now, how old is this dog?
He's the same age as Quill. He's 4 months as well. He'll be 4 in May. They're 3 months apart.
Have you shown him at all?
No, I was going to, and I decided to have him neutered.
Okay.
So he, I had to think, okay, am I going to get to shows or not? Even with Quill, I've only been to one, and that's to pick him up. He goes with Judy Harrington and Leslie. But a dear friend of mine, when I lost my Jack Russell, called me. Her name is Tracy Burkhead, and she lives up in Maine, and she breeds beautiful Jack Russells, Irish Jack Russ. And she says, Bill, I would love for you to have one of my puppies. And she gave him to me, which was quite a gift. And her dogs are so beautiful, and they're not cheap dogs. Her dogs are very much in demand. And again, and he was...
Well, I'm taking him home.
And there was a funny story with these because they come in different coats, as you know. They can be smooth or broken coat, wire coat, and some are very long. His father looks more like a Shih Tzu almost. His hair is so long. And
So he is a broken coat.
He is.
Okay.
And his coat actually was a little longer than this. I clipped him down for the summer. He is smooth, and I like that look. But because it's colder, I let this grow in. So you can see it's kind of thicker. But I picked a puppy just from a video, and we were going to name him Quinn. And she said, Bill, I think that dog's going to have a long coat. And I go, well, what about one of the other puppies? And she goes, well, I have a little female I think is going to be smooth. And I said, okay. And so I hadn't seen them, only pictures. We're going to name her Pearl. Then I noticed that all the little females from that litter were sold, and she was still left with 3 males. And I said, Tracy, do your females usually go quicker? And she says, yes. I said, well, sell her, because she's giving me a dog. I don't want her have to wait. I said, which of those 3 males do you think is going to be smooth or short-coated? And that's how this little boy came in existence. And his name is Ringo because right on his back end, when he was a baby, it looked like a ring around his tail.
Yes.
It's grown since then. It's more like a patch.
Now, how does he work out in the barn?
He is just as much a barn dog as Quill is. Jack Russells and horses go hand in hand. Or just on farms, period. Now, my first one from Ireland, she was a ratter. I mean, they closed the town dump in Falmouth, and all the rats migrated to all the horse barns in the neighborhood. And she would just spend her day, until we finally were able to get rid of all of the vermins. But that was one of their main jobs. He's not really interested. He did get a mouse last year, and I praised him. I said, oh, he does have that.
So he can be a ratter.
He can be. He could be if he wanted to be. He'd rather just be the greeter. So these guys...
And I bet the kids that come to the barn...
They love them.
Love these dogs.
So the hard part is getting the kids they're on the ground, petting these 2 dogs and playing with them. Come on now, it's time for your riding lesson. It's hard but it all goes hand in hand. It's the environment of the barn, having dogs and horses and cats. We have 3 cats. So it makes for a nice atmosphere.
How can people learn about your, what am I trying to say, of your barn?
Well,
Sterling Pointe Farm.
Sterling Pointe Farm.
Where are you
have a website.
on what is your website?
It's www.sterlingpointe. Point is spelled with an E on the end. Farm, all lower casing. They get to see a beautiful website with really nice pictures.
Lovely website.
Yeah, we're really happy with it. And so there's 2 main ways that people get to us. One is word of mouth, number 1.
Okay.
Word of mouth is the biggest. And then people just simply Googling or searching for a facility.
And that information will be left on. Okay, they're telling me that we are coming to an end.
Well, that
was great. We're going to have you back.
Yeah, we'll talk about fish and birds.
Fish and birds.
Which I both.
It was great to have you. I really enjoyed this. This was fun, and I'm bringing him home.
You wish, Brian.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
It was great.
Thank you.